Up next, we're going to learn some more about The Crown, a show I'm tremendously excited about. It launches on Netflix later this year. Please join me in welcoming to the stage the writer of The Crown, Peter Morgan. The show's producer, Andy Harries. And the stars of the series, Claire Foy, Matt Smith, and John Lithgow. Okay, now before we get started, let's take a quick look at some brand new footage from the series, out of sequence as well. Let's start with you, John, actually.
Well, it was a glorious experience for me. I think we had about 150 shooting days, and I only worked 50 of them. So, and I was the only person in the cast who'd come from afar. London was my location. So my wife and I just lived a lovely life in England for 8 months, and I occasionally worked. I, by the way, play Winston Churchill. You may not believe this. I look at you, Chris, and I kind of wish I were your size. I was the largest Winston Churchill ever seen on screen.
And maybe the first time anyone's ever looked at me and said, I wish I was your size.
Well, say 30 years older and pounds heavier.
Absolutely. Matt and Claire, filming this epic show out of sequence, what did that mean for you? What was that a challenge as actors?
Yeah, I mean, we had a wonderful time together. And it's really, the heart of it, there's this really rich love story, really, about these two sort of soulmates who are really put under great pressure by her responsibility to become queen so early and so unexpectedly.
I think it was difficult shooting out of sequence because this, for me anyway, I mean for everyone, but the sequence of events are extreme.
Yes.
The person that I am at the beginning and the person I am at the end are very, very far apart. But that's the beauty of the story, is that sort of how much you recognise yourself at the end of what you've been through, I think, and that's what the story is, I think, really. Is it?
It sounds familiar.
In fact, let's bring Peter and Andy in, because this project began with you. Peter, where did this idea come from? You've obviously written about the royal family in the past, and you've written about Queen Elizabeth in the past, but this time period specifically.
Well, I remember when I was writing The Queen, which would have been back in 2006, and Andy here, he probably won't thank me for reminding him, but he told me, whatever you do, don't put Tony Blair in the film. This will be a disaster. And I tried writing it without a prime minister, and it didn't work for me. And the dynamic is so electric when you have, the elected power, and you have, as it were, inherited power. And as soon as I put Tony Blair in, it came alive. And I so enjoyed writing the scenes between prime minister and sovereign that later, when I came to think about Churchill, who was 73 when the Queen became Queen, and she was only in her mid-20s, I thought, what an interesting relationship, like an educating Rita, this girl who had got the crown completely unexpectedly, and this great titan. Well, effectively, he's like her grandfather. And I thought, how that's a relationship I'd like to explore, because in the end, he became dependent on her in some shape or form. And out of that then came this idea, there's more to this than just a single film. This could actually, really work as a television show. And that's when I said to Andy, why don't we consider this as a TV show?
And Andy, at what point did Netflix get involved? And did that
Well, Netflix it was such a wonderful and ambitious idea. I was incredibly excited because I think Peter had shown with the movie and with many of his other films that that when you start to scratch the surface of something like The Queen, and when you start to think about the extraordinary thing about the royal family is you can barely invent the extraordinary crises they seem to have generated over the last 30, 40 years, and the situations that they have found themselves in and continue to survive. So it was such a rich subject. And we knew that we had to do it really, really well. We had to do it with ambition. We had to do it with a really good budget. And we also, I knew, and I think we knew this from the success of the film, that there was a real global audience for a subject like this. There just is an enduring fascination for the British royal family around the world, and particularly in America. So I think when we took it to Netflix, we were cautiously excited and optimistic that they would share that excitement, and happily they did. So that was it.
Absolutely. And Peter, can you talk about research? I presume you can't just call up Buckingham Palace, ask to speak to the Queen, and get her recollections of the time period.
I spend most of my time on the phone to the Queen. No, I have no contact with members of the royal family, and I have a team of researchers. Happily, almost everything that is done in Downing Street and in terms of the royal, court circular, a lot of that's on the record. But of course, a lot isn't on the record, particularly this weekly meeting that the Prime Minister of Great, has with the Queen. It's called the audience, and nobody knows what is said, not even the Prime Minister's wives or husband in one case. And I just thought, well, that's just a gift for a dramatist, is to try and imagine and to write what we don't know, but what we would love to imagine. And so I have 4 full-time researchers, they work around the clock, and reading biographies, breaking them down, showing them to me in note form, researching archive material. So not all of it is exactly what happened, because sometimes you don't know, but a lot of it is very, very accurate.
Yeah. And also, I mean, that was one of the great virtues of the piece for me, is that I sort of learned a lot about the history of my own country that I was completely unaware of.
Such as?
Well, I can't admit it because it makes you sound dumb. But you do learn a lot about the history of Britain and about the royal family and their sort of heritage and lineage. And I mean, also particularly the character I play, Prince Philip. His story is a very, just the history of it is very interesting.
And we all have our idea of Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip and Winston Churchill. How do you go about investing these characters with a realism, with a sense of depth, and not just simply impersonating? And John, let's start with you.
Well, I knew I would never completely duplicate Winston Churchill. I didn't even aspire to a perfect impersonation. I completely immersed myself in reading his work and biographies of him. I saw an enormous amount of video and audio, worked with incredible collaborators, Michelle Clapton, the costumer, the makeup. I had the most extraordinary fat suit created for myself. And I just sort of, my best reference was myself. I simply tried to turn myself into the essence of Winston Churchill and try to, my greatest ambition was to just make people temporarily forget about the actual Winston Churchill and accept this. Play him very realistically. The makeup is minimal. I relied entirely on a wig that managed to make me even balder than I actually am. And a couple of things inside my face now painted on it. And listen very, very carefully to that extraordinary voice of his.
Yes, absolutely. And Matt, Prince Philip also has an extraordinary voice. How close?
Yeah, I mean, again, I can't claim to have sort of impersonated that perfectly or anything. But also, what's interesting about it is the Prince Philip we know now and the Prince Philip that we perhaps knew then are 2 very different men, which we see and we get to understand where they came from a bit more, I suppose.
There's a sense that not quite he's a loose cannon, but there's a maverick edge to Prince Philip. Is that something you try to capture as well?
I think he's very much the sort of outsider.
Yeah.
There's a maverick edge to Matt Smith.
Yeah. One of the same.
Well, thank you very much.
And Claire, I mean, how do you go about even beginning to play the most famous woman on the planet?
When you put it like that, I don't know. I mean, how do you go about doing the job anyway? To be perfectly honest, because being an actor is a very odd thing to do with the time. I don't know. You sort of have to forget everything that you've known your whole life, and forget everything that you've been told to believe, and just accept the fact that I'm not her. So what am I going to do? I'm never going to be the perfect version of her. I'm never going to please all the people all the time. So I just have to read the script, which gives you the words and the scene and the reality of it and the truth. And then you can't really. I couldn't put any impression on that. I couldn't try and be this fake queen. I just had to be me pretending to be the queen, which is sort of, I suppose, what's ended up happening, which is a bit weird.
However, she did a very stunning first interview, I can tell you. She opened the first line when she read, and when she came in to meet us, we all just looked at each other and went, oh my God, it's just perfect.
They didn't.
She is.
Please, they went, right.
And Andy, as a producer, can you talk about the challenges of mounting a production this large, this massive in scope, and also trying to find, I guess, buildings that will double for Buckingham Palace?
Well, I think if you're a producer, the bigger the budget, the bigger the challenge, the longer the show, the more exciting it is. Because one loves a huge, great, big railway set to play with and try and make sure it works. Finding locations for Buckingham Palace, not challenging, but not incredibly difficult in London. There's an awful lot of looky-likey palaces and houses that are all around London, and some very key palaces in central London that you can get access to. There's a very famous one called Lancaster House, which even Queen Victoria thought was hugely more impressive than Buckingham Palace. And so we have access. That is our Buckingham Palace. So when you're inside Lancaster House, is a very impressive building. So, they're very expensive and they're a little bit tricky to get into because they often involve fee-paying public. But it looks pretty good, and we had a great location team and a fabulous designer to pull it all together.
I worked a lot of Sundays.
There's always on a Sunday. The only day the places are shut.
Otherwise, you have to frame the tours out.
Yes.
Very artfully. Okay, let's see if you have any questions now from you guys for our panel. A lot of hands went up in the front row here. There's a lady here in the very front row, and then two people here in the second row. Thank you. Just keep your hand up so the microphone lady can see you. Thank you.
Hi, Claire and Matt, will you say that you learned a bit about what it was like being a royal, and did it give you you sympathise with them?
Well, as people, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even today we say we sort of grew to love them.
Yeah.
Quite a lot in a much greater way than I ever did.
Well, I think I said this before, so I'm just repeating myself, but when you're a British citizen, or even just anyone around the world, you just accept that they're there, and you just sort of take them for granted on a day-to-day basis, and there's a Christmas speech and all those sorts of things, and then you stop and you realise, oh, hang on, this was a young couple with two young children who never thought this was going to happen for another kind of 20 years, and then all of a sudden their life changed in an instant, whilst also grieving and going through something terrible personally, and you just sort of, I don't know how anyone can't sympathise with that. So, and I think, yeah, you just, we definitely have, haven't we?
Yeah, and that's what's really brilliant, I think, about the writing in the series, is that you get to glimpse these people as real human beings. You see them getting ready for bed and their kind of domestic lives. It's interesting, at least it is to me.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Yes, question for Peter and Andy. I was wondering what the budget is like, and if you already got...
It's gone now, there's nothing left.
If you already got a green light for 6 seasons, which are apparently planned.
It's not nice to talk about money, is it, at any point in time? Look, it's a very, very good budget. I don't want to be drawn on figures, but it's most important. It's all on the screen, which I think is what Netflix wanted. We're doing this season at the moment, and we hope that people will love this season. And if it does, and they do, I guess we'll be up for more.
Peter, do you have enough material for 6 seasons or more?
Stuff. There's plenty of stuff. Actually, it's sort of pretty infinite. And of course, the better you get to know the characters, the better you get, the more you dig into it, the more there is. It's a tougher challenge for me to reduce it and to say, gosh, there's only this much I can tell. I mean, the span of the first season is 10 years, and I could have written 30 episodes in this time effortlessly. So there's plenty of stuff.
Lots of stuff. Excellent. Yes, please.
Hi. Can I just ask about the maybe Andy and Peter about the relations with the Palace and Downing Street? Do you have any feedback from them? Have they seen it? Are they going to see it? And also, Reed said that this is a globally incredible show and it looks amazing. Do you feel, as it's the first big UK show, Netflix, that it's quite a lot of pressure, particularly as the royal family?
Peter?
Do you want to handle? Shall I handle the pressure question?
Yeah.
Look, it's a pressure in the way that it is for any television show. It's either it's either good or bad, and you do your best. Yes, it's the first Netflix show out of the UK, and I think probably having made the film, probably some of my nerves dissipated. And this possibly answers the first part of your question. I know that Buckingham Palace and I think the Queen and Tony Blair had an agreement not to talk in public ever about the film. But of course, back channels are back channels, and we've had some feedback from them, but it's very elegant, I think, for them to not claim to have claimed to have not seen it, and I think it's appropriate for us to not have contact with them. A healthy and respectful distance on both parties is valuable, I think.
When we made the movie, it was very, very difficult to get locations in Scotland because I think there was a real uncertainty about tone and the content of the movie. And I think since the movie and the movie's success, and I guess you'd have to say that the movie probably was a good thing for the royal family, not a bad thing, not what we set out to do particularly, but it was. So I think we feel a much more. I think there's a sort of air of respect between us and the Palace. There has been some contact, very little really, but I've certainly had tea with the key press people of the Queen, just to try and outline what we're doing, when it lasts, when it might go up, all that sort of thing. Just the sort of broad. The broad plan, in a sense. They haven't read the scripts, they haven't asked to read the scripts, and I imagine they'll be filling in their Netflix subscription to watch whatever day it is it goes up.
Okay, we've got time for, I think, 2 last quick questions. Let's go up the back here. Yes, thank you.
I was just wanting to ask Matt, you said that, I heard you say you gave you a renewed love for the royal family. I was just wanting to talk about the sort of creative tensions between showing them in the raw and showing them in real life and it being too toady-ish. I mean, how did you all kind of...
What, sorry?
Toady-ish.
Toady-ish and sort of creepy. And I mean, I'm not saying you were, but I mean, how did you kind of avoid that kind of pitfall? As well as, Andy...
Well, I don't know that they are toady-ish.
I'm talking about toady-ish response. I mean, in terms of how did you...
You mean, is the show sycophantic in some shape or form? Is it like a whitewash? No,
well, obviously you talked about having access and having and the relations with the Palace. How did you kind of navigate that path between sort of negative and positive portrayal?
Well, I think the writing, firstly, is respectful, but it's not sort of overly reverential. It's honest. It's honest about the human traits of these people, and I don't know. We as actors sort of interpret that as honestly and as bravely as we can. I mean, ultimately these are real people that you get to interpret.
I feel pretty sure it's not a question you would ask if you'd seen it. I mean, insofar as I think it's pretty bold, but not sensational. I think.
Yeah.
The tone is I'm very vigilant about that tone, particularly to protect us and our independence.
But also, I think I don't know about you, but I wouldn't necessarily want to watch something that was like that, and I wouldn't like to be in something that was like that.
Yeah.
So I couldn't act a scene where I was trying to you can't, as an actor it's really difficult, but you can't want to be liked all the time, just as much as the person you can't want to be liked all the time. And if people watch it and they get sick to the back teeth of us, that's, you know, that's also the risk that you run. But I think you've got to take that risk by not trying to be perfect. Or...
It's very true. And in the case of Churchill, for example, I mean, Churchill himself was a character painted in very bold colors. And everybody knows he had a white-hot temper, he had great irascibility, but he was also sentimental and maudlin and weepy. He had, one of the first things that Stephen Daldry said to us was, think very, very strong gestures, and then leave it up to me to modulate it.
Okay, interesting. We've got time for one last question. Let's go right over here. There's a lady. Thank you.
This is for Claire, Matt, and John. Are there different challenges and steps you have to take to play people who are alive compared to people who aren't alive anymore, would you say?
Yes, it is true. I had a much freer hand with Churchill. I mean, as I studied and examined this man, I felt, my goodness, if I don't offer up a modest performance of him, I'll be accused of being excessive. If you behave exactly like Winston Churchill, you will be accused of too much theatricality. It was all a matter of adjustment. But I could be much more creative, I think, because Churchill is a fond memory now. He's not with us.
Yeah, I mean, I feel a great amount of pressure when any part that I play that you know that people are going to be watching it and they would have gone through that. So that I always feel that. I always feel, I don't know. Yeah, I suppose.
Also, I think the casting has been really brilliant in this show, Nina Gold, and I think from the sort of top down, what they've cast is the essence and the energies of these people. It's not, we're not doing caricatures of the royal family. You know, we're trying to sort of articulate an essence of their personality, and I hope.
Marvelous company. It's bar none the finest ensemble of actors I've ever worked with.
Really?
Wow.
Oh, nice.
And I play her the best leading lady. I mean, she just created a tone for the entire project. I had to get that. Absolutely true.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your questions. Before we say goodbye to our panel today, we want to share some news about The Crown. Take a look at this.
Times are changing. Country is changing.
We have a new sovereign, young, and a woman.
For better or worse, the crown has landed on my head.
Never let them see the real Elizabeth.
What kind of marriage is this? What kind of family?
The crown must always win.
Long live Queen Elizabeth.
There we go. 4th of November. You can see all the episodes of The Crown. Please join me in thanking our panel, our incredible panel, John Lithgow, Matt Smith, Claire Foy, Andy Harries, and Peter Morgan. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Oh no, absolutely.